The guide will use terms. Those of you who've been through stages, through the GROW material, we'll talk about the STAGES and the report, REPORT, and so forth. So we'll refer to those things if you're familiar with those. Otherwise, we'll talk about the patriarchal period, which I've given you dates here. By the way, this will be in your notebook as well to review. Most of these things you're very familiar with. I don't think I have to say much about it. We'll talk about Alexander the Great at multiple locations and Alexander Jannaeus, two different guys. Okay, Alexander the Great in the Hellenistic period, we'll see a number of things from the Hellenistic period. Antiochus Epiphanes, many of you know about him and what he did during that period of time before the time of the Maccabees. In Israel, they call the Maccabean period the Hasmonean period because it's the Hasmonean house. So if they say those kind of things, you'll need to know what they're talking about. Please, if the guide is using terms that you don't know what they are, come and tell me, and we'll get it straightened out for you because you need to understand what's going on. He's very glib. He is a good communicator, has a wonderful accent, but not a difficult accent. So you'll really enjoy him. But if you're not tracking, please come and let me know. Herod, obviously, is extremely important. You'll sit on the very first day in a theater that's still in use that was built by Herod. Unbelievable, right? And so you'll sit there and we'll study there together. The first morning we're there. We're going to have the ladies sing for us in the second group from that theater. Amazing. So Herod, his aqueduct will go to several things he built, including Masada. You'll see 10 or 12 things that Herod built while we're in Israel. So Herod's time is very important. Of course, the time of Christ we refer to everywhere. Oftentimes they'll say we're going to take you to a Byzantine church. What's a Byzantine church? It's a church that was built during the time of Christianity's heyday. After the Christians were allowed to finally worship in 325 AD, they were finally able to worship freely. They began to build what became known as the Byzantium period or empire. They began to build these churches which became known as Byzantine churches. So when they refer to that, they're talking about churches that were built between 300 and 600, basically. And you'll get to recognize them. After a while, you'll be there, you'll go, oh, there's a synagogue that was built then, and here's a Byzantine church. You'll get to identify them for yourself. You'll learn all about that. I think most of these things, 1948, Israel became a nation. We'll talk, when we go north particularly, we'll talk about the battles. We'll talk about the Yom Kippur War, the Six-Day War, so forth. So you might want to just brush up on those periods of time because the guide will assume you know that, and he's not going to take time to teach you those things. We'll just, he'll just start teaching. We'll see tells everywhere. A tell is a little hill, once was a little hill, that had a city built on it, and the city was destroyed, and instead of clearing the rubble, they built another city on it, and pretty soon it ended up being a very odd-looking hill. And this hill, this one particularly, had about 19 cities on it, and today of course, it's nothing but ruins. The one you'll go to is in Megiddo, has 22 cities built on one hill. And so there's 300 of these in Israel. You'll start to see them for yourself. Oh, over there's a tell. Of the 300, about 30 have been excavated. The rest of them are just sitting there, just tells. And so you'll see them everywhere. So we'll talk about over there's a tell. You need to know what that is, and you'll identify those for yourselves. We'll go to several Roman cities. We may go to Sephori. We'll probably go to Beit Shan. We'll see several Roman cities. Even in Jerusalem, we'll take you to the Cardo. The Cardo, the word Cardo is the word heart, cardiogram, right? So the Cardo is the north-south street in a Roman city. That's the Cardo. And we'll go to places, and the guide will say, this is the Cardo. That's the north-south street. And then he'll take you somewhere and say, this is the Decumanus. The Decumanus is the east-west cross street. And in other words, this is the square, would be maybe how we'd say it today. So when we're there, he'll constantly refer to those things, and just want you to make sure you know what they are. Lastly, a wadi, you'll see a number, particularly when we get to the south, number of wadis. Wadis are simply what you and I would call a valley, but they come from a higher location. And during rainy seasons, they wash out. And some of the wadis will look like rivers at some times, and other times they're just dry. Depending on when we're there and what kind of rain we get, you might get to see wadis in action, which is just amazing to see. So hopefully we'll get to see some of that. But he'll oftentimes point out to particular wadis. The one that's most famous, of course, is the one of the Good Samaritan story that winds right along the Good Samaritan road. And that wadi there, we'll point that out to you, and a number of others, but just so you know what that is.